What's up, Final Fantasy X fans? I'm X-Ray, and today I want to talk about the Final Fantasy X Blindfold Speedrun Challenge, if it's possible, and my findings on the subject. First off, I want to note that as of this recording, there is no video evidence proof of someone completing the game from start to finish blindfolded. First off, I want to talk about the rules and kind of explain some things because there are some stipulations to the blindfold rule that will make it possible. So the first rule is that you must have your blindfold on during all character control moments. The second rule is that menuing with the blindfold off is allowed, meaning the sphere grid, item customization, everything within the menu is allowed with the blindfold off for reasons that I will go into shortly. Okay, so now I want to talk about why it's difficult. After that, I will talk about why it's even possible. But first, I want to get these things out of the way that you might be curious about. Final Fantasy X is a game where it's quite linear. You might think this makes the blindfold run much easier, although with its constant camera angle switching and the lack of obvious audio cues, it becomes very difficult to navigate and some areas must be memorized. The elephant in the room is the Cloister of Trials, which I will talk about briefly. Running into a wall in Final Fantasy X doesn't make your character stop or play a sound like he's just run into a wall. This makes things more difficult when traversing the map, although if you run into a wall long enough and you realize the sound of your footsteps hasn't changed in the last 60 seconds, then you kind of know that, you might be stuck on a wall. Also in combat, sometimes when someone dies, it will play a sound, or when they are hurt, it also will make the same sound, which makes it really difficult to tell when someone has been killed or just hurt, and I'll explain more about that in a moment. The Cloister of Trials. Everyone's favorite part about Final Fantasy X. Absolutely no one would be happy if this feature was taken out. Obviously, you basically have to have them memorized perfectly, which I personally don't have them perfect with the blindfold off, so... there is one part of the game, though, that is more challenging than the other Cloister of Trials, and that's the Xanarkand Tetris puzzle. I still haven't completed this with the blindfold on. It will require the most memorization of basically all the game put together, as you have to walk back and forth between a room 6 times, along with not making a single pathing mistake, or it will reset your progress to the one that you previously completed. Now let's quickly talk about menuing being legal. For this, we will obviously need to use the sphere grid, along with allowing our community to use their eyes during the menu process, as if it was banned, it would make the challenge much more difficult, less fun, and harder to watch. One very important thing is allowing the sorting of items, so that when we are actually in a battle, we know where our Phoenix Downs or revives are, and otherwise it becomes all messed up as you get items from other fights. It changes where your items go. Combat is obviously much more difficult even with the use of the sphere grid, as things like healing the proper teammate becomes a challenge itself. I've died on random encounters due to not knowing that my party members have died. Along with the fact the only way you know who you are controlling is to move up and down on the command bar, counting the amount of abilities they have, or going further into the command bar to see what abilities they don't have. You may be wondering about Phoenix Downs, and there is an interesting mechanic with them. I'll talk about this in the What Makes It Possible section. The camera work in Final Fantasy X was somewhat polarizing to many of its players, as sometimes the camera will follow the character, then move to a different position entirely. Sometimes the camera will change within the same room, sometimes swapping your controls on the controller. This makes pathing very important and difficult for a lot of sections, one of them being Mount Gagazet, for example. Since for the most part Final Fantasy X isn't a huge open world game, for the required sections anyway, this means progression is fairly simple. Things that would seem difficult can become much easier with wall sliding, a technique which I imagine will be used for a very long time in this run. Obviously, you can run into a wall at a certain angle and still keep walking as if you were unobstructed. As this run grows, this will probably be used less. It will be slower than using the correct path to begin with, for sure. While I said audio cues are at a minimum, they are useful sometimes. There seems to be no reason for the character to make a noise when they get hurt. To me, it seems like they do sometimes and sometimes they don't. This makes overhealing prominent in the run, as you're never sure how low on HP they actually are. The running into a wall thing is manageable because you can usually tell when it sounds like you haven't moved, though, as I mentioned earlier. With the exception of Makalania, Bavel, and Xanarkin, the cloister trials are fairly easy to overcome. They are short sections and are only about 5 minutes long, making them completely possible. Obviously, the hardest part of the game is the Xanarkin cloister, as this requires you to do some very precise pathing that would be impossible without a proper path, as you must step on lights on the floor to complete a puzzle 6 times in a row, basically. Without the ability to look during the menu process, you wouldn't know where your heals are. This means, for now, this should be legal, as the random nature of how items are changed will change the position of your items from fight to fight, making the challenge that much harder. This would be frustrating and difficult to watch, so I think menuing should be allowed. So, about Phoenix Downs. Did you ever realize when you go to use one, you don't have to pick which character? Unless there are more than one down? This is because it automatically selects the down character, making this one of the reasons that the challenge is even possible. As I mentioned, using the command bar is key to figuring out what character you are controlling. This is another reason menuing should be legal, as doing the sphere grid blind just sounds very not fun and would cause you to be confused about who has what abilities. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about this, and it makes this very challenging. If you enter a room and the camera switches, if you change the direction of your stick, the controls will flip as well to the new layout of the camera. This causes you to get lost very easily, even early on, like at Baj Temple. The Baj Temple part is one of the most challenging early game locations for multiple reasons, including the fire itself. You must be standing almost directly on top of it and facing it to trigger it. This means your pathing must be very precise, or you will run around for 5 minutes trying to find the fire directly in the center of the room. So how to try it? How can you yourself go out there and start trying this run, even just for fun? First, you'll need a name for your character, and as a joke, I think we should make it a run, tradition that we name the character while we're blind. So this has led to names that I've had, such as Booty Clips and BSPG 5986 or something along those lines. So, yeah, definitely make that a thing. Secondly, start by doing the beginning and removing the blindfold when you get stuck. Figure out the path you must take and make saves through the whole game so you can practice certain sections. Always fight blind though. Don't for any reason look while you are fighting, as one single turn can change the tides of the battle entirely. And someone please figure out the Xanarkin puzzle path. This is the most challenging part of the entire game, and I do not have a path for it yet. I'm sure it's possible without customization and without sphere grid. Although if you cannot menu while no sphere grid, I believe it would be nearly impossible. For now, let's allow them until we have the game mapped for blind runs. So why do I want you to try? Well, I have little time currently, and I have a pretty bad memory. This makes the memorization part much more difficult for me. I know this is very possible, although I'm not an experienced enough blind speedrunner to make this happen anytime soon. I'd love to see someone be the first person to ever do this. We need to do this as a community and help each other learn. I just simply can't do it without your help. The challenge is brutally fun and has even been more exciting than my NSG runs for sure. It completely changes the game, making it a whole new adventure, so I hope you guys will go out and try it, and let me know your findings, please. We can get this done. Anyway, that's about all I have to say, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.